All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first DEI committee meeting of the 2022-2023 school year. We're so excited to start this meeting. We have a lot of new members who are going to be joining us really for their second time, and we'll start our meeting with reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So this time we'll take some time to look through the minutes, which have been shared out to everyone. Take a look through, and we're waiting on a motion to approve the minutes from our June meeting. Maxine and seconded with Rebecca. All right. So the minutes are approved. Now we'll move on to our agenda items. So we have 7 different items on the agenda for today, and we'll start off with subcommittee selection. So just for folks who are watching at home or watching after the fact, or just new to DEI in general and the way that the committee is structured, this committee meets publicly once a month, and we also have 4 different subcommittees which also meet regularly over the course of the month and do a lot of the, boots on the ground kind of nitty gritty work that's going to happen over the course of the month. And they in turn report back to this larger committee. So given the fact that this is our first meeting, we don't have subcommittee reports. Instead, we do have some exciting announcements of the different members who are going to be in each of the subcommittees. Now, I'll hold myself back from doing a drum roll before each of the different committees, although if I'm going to be honest, I am tempted to do so. So we'll start off with the newest of our committees, which is Student Voice. And this is something that we're definitely really excited about. It was talked about a lot last year, and we've thought about ways to have this work. We heard in May and in June in particular about some of the challenges that happen that are just inherent to an environment where you have a lot of adults and some students, and being able to use equitable voice, as well as sustaining this work, because one thing that we are keenly aware of and want to focus on is not allowing this to just be a one-time effort or a one cohort model. So kind of that continuity and extending this to FMS students is something that we really focused on. So the inaugural members of our Student Voice Committee, just in alphabetical order. So we have Maxine will be on it, Maxine Alpart. Then we have Katie. Then we have Blanca, Chris Yeager, Savannah, and Kylie. I just want to give a round of applause. Hold on. Thank you. It's exciting. One that is very exciting to me is our research committee, and seeing the number of people who are really excited to hop on board with that. So our research committee, again, we have, going in alpha, we have Mirsad, we have Nina, we have Julianne, we have Tiane, Tian, and then Carla. No applause for research. Then we have community engagement, and we have Tibisai, and we have Lewis, Elizabeth, Gwen, and Mary. I like the snaps. I saw that Tibisai. And then communications, we have Rebecca, Amy, Mike, Laster, and Seema. All right. And for just for community or committee members, a grid that has all the membership will be shared out to all of you. So that was a quick thing. So everyone that's on the forum was able to get their top choice, but still we'll send out that grid just to make sure that everyone is aware of who to contact on other committees as well when we're collaborating with one another. The next agenda item that we have, actually, real quick, does anyone have any questions about that? No? Okay. The next agenda item is a standing agenda item. And again, for folks new to the committee or first-time viewers at home, DEI in Action What we do with that segment, it's really a time for me to just share some things that are happening in the space of DEI across the district that have happened over the past month or that are slated to happen shortly after our meeting, just based off of timing. And I'm proud to say and happy to say that we do have something we can share for this, even though we're just at the start of the school year. So alongside one of the assistant principals at the high school, Brian Mazza, uh, he and I, we did a training with all of our fall athletes, varsity JV and Mod 9 teams as well. And so we're all able to get together and just do some building around culture and cultural competency, and really leaning into all the different strands to be cognizant of on a team in order to enhance us so that we're more than just the sum of our parts, and that we can really start to become a group that is building one on each other from our differences and recognizing them as strengths and areas where we can really go further than we did before. Something that stood out to me at one point, we asked each team to select as a group alongside their coaches 3 words that would define their team. And the number one word that came up across all of the different levels was family. And so that speaks to the culture that exists in Guilderland. It speaks to the fact that every single individual does have culture and has culture that can continue to grow and expand on. And it also speaks to what we're trying to do here. So if we are serious about acknowledging that everyone has culture, then that means that for us to be a family, we've got to understand and lean into that culture. So that's the DEI in action update for this month. Next agenda item, and I know I'm flying through them because the first couple are really mostly just updates. The next one is an Equity Institute update. And I can do this alongside Dr. Wiles. Do you mind sharing some of the things with us?
Sure. I'll get us started and then you can fill in everything that I forget. You might have noticed when we did the committee assignments, we didn't talk about the audit committee because the audit committee is sort of on a sabbatical while we take up our work with a group called Progression Partners, which is a consulting group who's going to help us do the work that the audit committee was trying to structure, and then realized it was a tremendous task for a handful of people to do for our entire district. So last year we worked through our Capital Region BOCES and found Progression Partners, and we have a several month plan in working with them, and I'm happy to report that we're already well underway with that plan. The group, the main consultant is Natalie McGee. She first met with our entire administrative leadership team back in July to give that group an overview of the work we would be doing over the course of the next several months, because they will need to be in a supporting role for sure. And then in August, we had the first module of what we call the Equity Institute. And that training was for the equity teams that have been created in each of our 7 buildings. So on August 15th and August 22nd, the 2 dates that folks could choose from, they spent a full day working with Natalie, getting the framework of the Institute kind of laid out, and we did a number of activities and really started to dig in on how will this work unfold over the course of the next several months. I think that both sessions were very well received. People left energized and feeling like we had a good fit with Natalie in helping us do this work. And then just today, Matt and I and Rachel Anderson met with Natalie once again to plan out the next several events. There's 2 more trainings for our equity teams coming up in October, one on October 3rd and another on October 24th. And that is kind of their ongoing training. And then on November 1st, which is our superintendent's conference day, Natalie will be back here in Guilderland, and she will be meeting with all of our staff across the district in a series of meetings. We need to work out the logistics a little bit to help everyone, even if they're not directly related or connected because they're not on the equity team, but so that everyone understands, why we're doing this work, what this work entails, and how it will unfold over the course of the year. And she'll be able to answer questions and so on. And then there's one more training for the teams in December on the 5th. And after that, they will begin actually writing an action plan by building to help us identify the areas where we need to do work and some strategies for addressing them. And then sprinkled within all of that, there are two other facets of the work. One are called equity walks, and Natalie will be in our buildings for about 4 days in November, walking through each of the buildings with the teams, doing really kind of data collection and analysis by seeing our schools in action. And that will be part of the data that helps us define our team. And then the last piece, unless I'm forgetting something, is the focus groups. So she will be meeting with students as a group, parents, and also employees and staff to get their perceptions in a focus group setting of, so what is your experience here in Guilderland, and what can we learn from you to help inform our plan? So there's lots of different pieces to this and lots of different ways that individuals can be involved. And I think we're off to a good start. Matt, how'd I do?
That was perfect. I've been following along with the scope of service. Didn't miss a beat.
Does anyone have any questions about our work with Progression Partners?
I was just curious if we're going to be given just information on the focus groups, like that's going to go out to everybody for participation, or how that's going to be disseminated to folks for participation.
The invitation for it. The worker bees in this are the equity teams in each of the buildings, and they don't know this yet, but if they're watching, they'll find out that part of their assignment is going to be to help put those focus groups together so that they are diverse and representative of lots of different perspectives across the district. So that is going to be a pretty significant task for them, because we were talking with Natalie about this very thing today, that it's really important that we get a mix of perspectives on each of those teams. So great question, Tibisai.
I just want to add to that too, with the diversity of perspectives, it's also from diversity of roles in the district. Yeah. So, when we say staff, it shouldn't all be teachers that are in the focus group. So we want to make sure that we're getting every type of stakeholder that we can who is part of the Guilderland community. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
So I have 2 questions, I guess, really. Will their work include, looking at things like the number of students from different races or ethnicities that get sent to the principal's office? And that not just like walking through the hallways, but looking at the actual data of, maybe bullying of kids based on, so kind of finding out where we are from actual data rather than just from looking at the schools, where people might be on their best behavior when they see a bunch of people walking down the hallway. So, is there going to be also hard data involved? That's one of my questions. The other question is, can this committee go to any of these trainings?
I can address the first question that Elizabeth has. I think that the place where the data analysis is going to be done is in our equity planning teams, who, when they're putting together what are the areas where we're struggling, well, how do we know where we're struggling? And some of it's going to be the qualitative data that I just described, but there's also a quantitative element of this. And it's data that we have, honestly, pretty readily available. It's just pulling it together and thoughtfully looking through it. So that's a yes. I think I don't think it's a bad idea, but I'd want to talk with Natalie about, how comfortable she is with people coming in and out of trainings, because the days are sequential. So I'll have to get back on that. Matt, I don't know if you have any thoughts on it off the top of your head.
No, I was thinking the same thing. I know that the trainings they're centered around those equity teams that Dr. Wiles mentioned earlier. Those are the primary agents that are going to be there. And I'm thinking about the focus groups, and from that lens, the community stakeholder lens, I think that makes a lot of sense for DEI community members to be folks involved with that. Because one of the other things is the actual equity team members, they won't be in the room when the focus groups are happening. And so they're not going to be present in this space. And I think it makes sense for people on the DEI committee to be folks who are tapped and reached out to and included in those kinds of conversations. But I think that is something to reach back out to Natalie next time we talk to her about.
It's a great question, Elizabeth. I have some ideas, but I'm going to hesitate to just blurt them out without thinking about it a little bit.
Yes.
I have the same question, and more about the same question about the data, though. I think that one problem with the audit committee was that they came to realize that even if they looked at a whole bunch of, DASA incidents or whatever, or, all the data about the different kids that get sent to the principal's office every year, or that get suspended or get whatever it might be, they wouldn't have the number crunching skills to be able to figure out what that means. So I thought that was one of the beauty of getting this company to help us, that they know how to do that. They know how to turn, a bunch of data into some kind of meaningful, I'm not sure if, people who are teachers or busy with all that other teaching stuff are going to be able to make sense out of stuff like that. So I was hoping that those people in that company were going to be doing that for us, because it's probably a huge task.
There's a certain amount of capacity that we have within our own expertise, aside from, our teaching faculty, around the analysis and collection of data. So pulling together the reports isn't necessarily the hard part. It's what do you do with them once you see them? And I do think we'll get some guidance in that respect.
Yes, and just hopping onto that, one of the things that was mentioned in our conversation today was about understanding essential elements and being able to unpack that and being able to think about elements of culture in specific to each building as well as district-wide. So a lot of the reports that are going to be used in the equity planning are compiled by progression partners. So there'll be joint work with it. I think the next person was Rebecca.
I know, Matt, you said that various stakeholders would be included. I was just wondering about recent graduates. We would reach out to recent graduates.
I see no reason we couldn't. I think that element is important to bring forward to the equity teams. I'll definitely make a note of that when we get to the stage where we're compiling the focus groups. I think that that's a really excellent place to reach out to. And I can say kind of tertiary to this, that is something that I did spend some time doing this summer, is touching base with some recent graduates and discussing some of their experiences at Gildron. So I definitely agree that there's a lot of value there. Thank you for that.
I just think they might be, more willing to perhaps disclose things. Mm-hmm. The board had a phone call with recent graduates a couple of years ago, pre-COVID, and we learned a lot of interesting things. So I just think it would be a valuable source.
Absolutely. Tibisai?
So I just, to Elizabeth's question regarding some of the data, the government does collect discipline and in-school suspension data through the National Center for Education Statistics. So the last comprehensive report that they put together was in 2017. And there you can actually look up Guilderland Central School District, and it shows pie graphs where you can see school enrollment versus in-school suspensions by demographic information. So I am hopeful that, again, someone who did this work with school districts, that they're aware of that, and will be able to work with Dr. Wiles to look at what the reporting is that has to be done for the federal government anyway, and be able to collect that data and put it into some comprehensive way for the layman to be able to look at it and be able to look for disproportionality, which I think is what you're talking to, Elizabeth, is like, how many folks do we have enrolled versus how many are getting suspended, and where there might be some challenges or some areas of opportunity there. I'm not on the research committee by any means, but I just wanted to say that there is that data from 2017. So that's a great benchmark and starting point, even if they don't have 2020 or 2021 data. It's still a place that's already collected, already disaggregated, that they can start from.
Yeah, disproportionality is what I was thinking of, definitely. And we've been talking on this committee about looking in the need to look into whether Black students, for instance, are disproportionately disciplined, and whether they are disproportionately not given opportunities that other people might be given. And the same would hold for people of different income levels or different abilities or different sexual identity, all sorts of things. So yeah, that's what I was thinking. So are those people being selected for honors classes? So that kind of data, I think, is really good for us to know.
Thank you. And thank you, Tim Sy, for putting the link in the chat. Blanca, and then Seema.
Thank you. Along the lines of what Rebecca was saying, I do think there's value in reaching out to recent graduates. I wonder also if there is value in reaching out to alum who may have graduated a long time ago, just to see if there's any similarities, to see if we've made any progress, if there's a continued sentiment about the way folks were treated back then. I'm assuming Seema would be willing. I know I'm willing.
Thank you. I think that is definitely a good thought. Seema?
I just wanted to mention, I think in terms of the progression partners, I think we need to let them, like, we are paying them to do, this is their job. So I think there's data out there, and that's great. We can interpret whatever data that's reported, because it has to be reported, right, as part of the rules for the state. But I think we need to let the audit happen and then see what we get. And then I'm sure there'll be things to work on and things that we're doing great. But I also feel like it's jumping the gun there's just, I don't know, there's maybe no point to come up with all these ideas ahead of time until we see what they put out there. And I don't know if I am maybe just misinterpreted things wrongly, but I think we probably have, like, we know the district has a ton of data. They already have a lot of people on faculty and staff who do this stuff regularly and work with this stuff regularly. So I don't think any of this will be a surprise. It will just be, it's nice that we have a group of people, like Elizabeth said, who this is their job to focus on this, because everybody's too busy. Everybody's wearing like 10 different hats. So there's no time to stop and look at this and make sense of it. So luckily we were afforded the opportunity with those funds to pay this group to do this. So let's let them do that and see what they bring us.
Thank you. Chris?
feel like I'm going to echo that a bit, but also not to forget that some of this is not capturable in a quantitative manner. Like Elizabeth, you mentioned sexual identity being an area. How are they being represented? That's not something we have data on because it's not something that we capture in our eSchool data. So when we pull stuff, kids don't qualify that when they register for school, and it probably changes significantly along the 12 years that they're in our district. So I'm really looking forward to hearing how those conversations and focus groups go, because that's when we're going to get some of those more there's your culture that's identifiable that you may have checked off on a registration. But I look in eSchool constantly at a very large scope of kids, and sometimes I'm like, I don't think that's right when I look at some of the registration information. May have been entered wrong. Parents may just choose to qualify their child in a way that is not what you would expect. So, who you see when you look at a child and then they receive that discipline might not accurately represent what their race is, what their sexuality is, and all those things. So I think that qualitative data is going to be incredibly important.
We definitely agree about that. I think that's one of the key things with our work with progression partners, that it's not one or the other. It's going to be both. The quantitative data is important, but it's not more important than the qualitative data, and vice versa. It's definitely a combination of the two that go into the action plan. Yes, and echoing what Dr. Wells said at the start, really the work began in a very, very good way. And folks I spoke to from all of the 7 different equity teams seemed really, really excited and galvanized by being together and really getting underway with this. Are there any other thoughts or questions surrounding the Equity Institute? Yes, Elizabeth?
So who are the equity teams again, and like how did they get picked? Are they teachers, did you say? Did they volunteer? How many are there from a school?
So the quick answer is that each building has its own, I say quick, but it's me. So each building has their own equity team. So the building principal is part of the team for each of their buildings, alongside different staff. So it's not just teachers. There are teachers, there are some TAs, there's clerical staff, there's just people from a number of different capacities. And they were selected and also volunteered to be part of this. So this was something where they expressed interest. Principals reached out to staff, and there was invitations for who wanted to be a part of it. And there were also some folks too who spoke with me at the start of summer and wanted to be a part of it. So that's kind of the composition of the equity team. So it's people who work on different buildings across different titles. Are there any other questions as of right now about our work with progression partners? Katie?
Are there any of our counseling services staff from any of the buildings participating on these equity teams?
Yes. Chris, I'll let you take that one.
I can speak for Farnsworth. Yes, I'm a school counselor at Farnsworth, and I'm on the equity audit team, and also helped kind of look around the building and see who would be excellent representatives of particularly people who see students in very different lights and from different perspectives. So we really focused on not just teachers who, like, we got world language teachers, and teachers from different departments was a big focus when we were looking around and asking for volunteers, and also volunteering a few people because we're like, you'd be really good for this. So yes.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead, Blanca.
I could actually probably wait till the end, but just it made me think, are we looking at, or is the audit looking at the Positivity Project at all to see, if it's meeting any of our goals in terms of DEI? I'm just wondering, is anything?
So I can take this, and then Dr. Wells, if I missed something, please feel free to backfill. The audit's taking a holistic look at things that are happening across the district, so that's definitely part of it. What existing initiatives do we have Part of the equity walks will also be, so again, going through the buildings and actually seeing each building in the context that it's in, as well as, okay, what are the things happening there? So that will be something that's taken into account, but I don't know that there will be a specific thing of, okay, we're looking at the Positivity Project and doing metrics just for that. But
Okay.
my understanding may be incorrect. Feel free to correct me, Dr. Wells.
I just, I've always sort of had in the back of my mind that we're investing in the Positivity Project. We've received mixed reviews on it. And one of the purposes is to, help us reach our goals in the area of DEI. And so how do we know if it's effective? And so I just want to put that out there, especially because, what's taught in the classroom can be so variant. It depends on the teacher, et cetera. So that's why I bring that up.
To Blanca's point, I think it would be not fair to say that this work around our equity audit is an evaluation of our Positivity Project. It's not targeted to do that, but it does not preclude our conducting our own evaluation of the impact of the program as this year unfolds as a separate task. But I think Matt's right. There's going to be some crossover on a qualitative kind of level, but we didn't say to progression partners, please evaluate the effectiveness of the P2 program.
Yes, go ahead, Mary.
I'm just curious, when we get the report, will they be breaking things down by, primary grades and secondary and the high school? Incidents of in-school suspension are probably greater at a high school level than at an elementary level, but things are happening at that elementary or primary level that, can be concerning. So will they be breaking things down for us to see?
I'm going to hazard a yes, Mary. We haven't started the planning piece yet. We're still in the training part. So I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but each of the teams is working on their own building. So almost by virtue of the fact that they're working elementary, middle, high, we are going to see that kind of a breakout, at least by the level of the building.
Okay.
But that's a great point. And I'm taking a lot of notes here to make sure that when we're doing our work, we're getting at some of these really good points you're all making.
Does anyone else have any other questions or thoughts pertaining to progression partners and the work that's happened thus far? Okay. So then that brings us to a bit of our own learning and the learning component for this year. So this is more of just an update than anything else. But after reading through the contributions made from members of this committee and thoughts on books versus articles and even different suggestions, the steering committee is recommending that we read and discuss a book called A Place to Belong, Celebrating Diversity and Kinship in the Home and Beyond by Amber O'Neill. So a description of this is available in the agenda for everyone, but for the sake of folks watching at home, I'll just read it out loud as well to make sure the community kind of knows what's going on, because a big part of our learning component really is doing this publicly and alongside the community. So it's a guide for families of all backgrounds to celebrate cultural heritage and embrace inclusivity in the home and beyond. Gone are the days where socially conscious parents feel comfortable teaching their children to merely tolerate others. Instead, they are looking for a way to authentically embrace the fullness of their diverse communities. A Place to Belong offers a path forward for families to hone their cultural heritage and champion diversity in the context of daily family life. By fostering open dialogue around discrimination, race, gender, disability, and class, teaching hard history in an age-appropriate way, curating a diverse selection of books and media choices in which children see themselves and people who are different, celebrating cultural heritage through art, music, and poetry, modeling activism, and engaging in community service projects as a family. And so this is really the context that we're leaning into. And we'd like to start this with everyone going into our next meeting, if possible, if we're able to get things set up to do so. Does anyone have any questions or concerns? Any red flags, something that members of the steering committee might have missed or might not have been aware of surrounding this? Yes, Nina. Oh, you're still muted.
Sorry about that. So is the book centered from a variety of different perspectives? Is it like different personal stories from each individual culture, or is it like anecdotal, or is it more of an overview type of book?
I'll drop in the chat the Google preview for the book, and with that, everyone can see some of the different chapters and the topics covered, but I'll read them out loud just for the sake right now. So part work is really laying the groundwork. So that's evaluating your family culture, embracing tough table topics, establishing a blueprint, so inclusive family ways and home culture. Then the next one is about creating like home libraries, and so mirror on the wall, when children see themselves in books, pulling back the curtains, uncovering books as windows to the world, life-giving books, what makes a book good. Then part 3 is about shaping the atmosphere, so it's deeply rooted, leaning into family culture and history, then looking at representation and how that matters, from tragedy to triumph, so bringing hard history into things, and then choosing joy and finding beauty through culturally rich learning. Part 4 is moving beyond the 4 walls, so that's theory to practice, and it's sacred spaces and places, and then so we've been harvest, so launching socially conscious change makers. And the length of this book is about the same as the 5 practices book that we had last time. And that Google preview that I put in the chat will allow you to also, I'm not saying this right now, and everyone will get a copy of this book, but gives a good look at the style of writing. And something that the steering committee wanted to try to center on was making sure that this the text that we use was going to be applicable and accessible to everyone across the range for this committee. That's a long way of answering your question. I hope it did answer your question. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions, comments, or concerns about the learning component? No? Okay.
So Matt, I'll just jump in with a process piece. We have, in anticipation of tonight, gotten our quotes. And so if we're all good, Deb Sim, the wonderful, amazing Deb Sim, will hit send tomorrow so we can get the books ordered. And then she will be in touch with all of you to figure out how best to get them to you as quickly as possible. And, we'll have to play it by ear. It's hard to tell how long it will take anything to get from point A to point B. But hopefully it'll be quick and we'll have time to get the book in your hands in time to do a little bit of the reading before our next meeting. That's the goal.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
This might be a dumb question. I haven't been in school in a while. Is it like a chapter a week? Are we assigned a certain chapter to discuss, or is it kind of free form?
So the way we did things last year was thematically. And so I'm anticipating that would be the same way that we would approach this book. So that would also be something where I'm jumping a little bit ahead of the agenda, but that's one of the things the steering committee take a look at is, okay, what do we want to structure for the learning component? But we definitely are not in any time period trying to bury anyone with, hey, go home. We have 80 pages of reading for, this session. So it won't be an overwhelming amount of, well, I hope not. But that's what the steering committee is for.
I just like to be organized. That's all. Thanks.
Yes. No, that's an excellent question.
Last time it was like a chapter a week or something. And a chapter a month, and it had built-in questions in it. I don't know if this one will or not, but
Right.
about the questions in the chapter.
That's an excellent point. Thank you for bringing that up. So I'll also address that too. That's going to be one of the things that kind of got a discussion. So when we do the reading, a part of our standing agenda is really a discussion that we all have together, where we're about to do a facsimile of that right now, and we'll have kind of some guiding questions to think about, and really it's just about learning openly. About the things that we didn't know and where we can go. Are there any other questions about the learning component? Okay. So that then brings us to where we are for tonight. This is we're gonna watch a video together, and it's one that may be familiar to many of you. And we won't watch the full segment, although I will leave the full segment in the chat so that people can have that as a frame of reference to be able to go back and watch the full video, which is almost 8 minutes. But we're just going to watch a couple of key points from this one, which comes out to be about 3 minutes. So the 8-minute version is available here. And this is by Rita Pearson. And the topic is really just why every student deserves a champion. So this just background why we're viewing this specifically. The steering committee thought that this might be a good video just to remind us a little bit of our why and mentality behind why we're doing this. So we'll take a second and we'll watch this together, and then we'll have just a space for us to be able to talk and process our thoughts out loud together. Okay.
Kids don't learn. It's either poverty, low attendance, negative peer influences. We know why. But one of the things that we never discuss, or we rarely discuss, is the value and importance of human connection. Relationships. I have had classes that were so low, so academically deficient that I cried. I wondered, how am I going to take this group in 9 months from where they are to where they need to be? How do I raise the self-esteem of a child and his academic achievement at the same time? One year I came up with a bright idea. I told all my students, you were chosen to be in my class. Because I am the best teacher and you are the best students, they put us all together so we could show everybody else how to do it. One of the students said, really? I said, really? And I gave him a saying to say, I am somebody. I was somebody when I came. I'll be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here. I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go. And they said, yeah. You say it long enough, it starts to be a part of you. Both my parents were educators. My maternal grandparents were educators. For years, I watched my mother take the time at recess to review, go on home visits in the afternoon, buy combs and brushes and peanut butter and crackers to put in her desk drawer for kids that needed to eat, and a washcloth and some soap for the kids who didn't smell so good. See, it's hard to teach kids who stink. Years later, after she retired, I watched some of those same kids come through and say to her, you know, Miss Walker, you made a difference in my life. You made it work for me. You made me feel like I was somebody when I knew at the bottom I wasn't. And I want you to just see what I've become. And when my mama died 2 years ago at 92, there were so many former students at her funeral. It brought tears to my eyes, not because she was gone, but because she left a legacy of relationships that could never disappear. Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Is this job tough? You betcha. Oh God, you betcha. But it is not impossible. We can do this. We're educators. We're born to make a difference. Thank you so much.
So there are a couple of different things that, as we're just kind of processing and thinking about this, to maybe guide our conversation. And I'll say the line, say the thing I'm thinking about, and kind of turn it over to the group to be able to share. And for this, we can go just one after another, and we'll follow the order of hands to keep a more natural flow to the conversation. The line, I deserve the education I get here. I deserve the education I get here. Let's speak on that.
Okay. Hi. So for me, especially as a teacher, that completely resonated. You know, in striving to achieve equity for my students, I find myself having to stop sometimes and listen to them and interact with them because they come into my classroom with so many different thoughts and needs and things going on personally. So the only way to really get them to connect is by me reaching to them and listening to what their needs are. So much of equity to me is based on that. So I completely agree with that.
Go ahead.
I think there can be a lot of guilt for some kids that come from really struggling families or backgrounds if they're succeeding and the rest of their family isn't. So I think giving them room for that success, pointing out that they deserve it, your line, can be really meaningful because I think it's sort of an unrecognized guilt.
Go ahead.
As a student, I really like that line. I think it places everyone on the same playing field. I think that every person, no matter like where they're from, just has the right to be educated and to succeed. And to hear a teacher tell her students that they belong there is so important because, again, kids come from everywhere, and to know that you have a teacher on your side is like an amazing feeling. To know that like there's someone in a building that you spend like 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, like that you can trust is a good feeling. And just like listening to that teacher speak, I know that like everyone at that school like loves them. Like I feel like that energy like really resonated. So I think that every person deserves a place in every class. And it's like important for kids who want to do more to hear that and know that like they can challenge themselves and like push them to do better.
Yeah, I think coming from another student perspective, like just going off of what Maxine said, I think school is not only important for learning, but also important for like finding who you are as a person and just that empowerment that comes from a teacher, someone that you look up to, and someone who is gone through like everything in life, who's like much older than you and much more experience, is so important for me personally too, because like just having that person as a mentor, but also a safe space to communicate and sort of as an outlet for my struggles, and like just like even like just talking with them is really helpful, like to creating that safe environment and that safe climate in school where you are for like 8 hours a day and most of your time really.
Go ahead, Blanca, and then Seema.
So that TED Talk actually really resonated with me. That line in particular, to me, it represents this notion that every student or every person should be treated with respect, and that teachers providing a student that may not feel a sense of dignity, she's providing them that dignity. And just as an example, I know I mentioned during the orientation that I'm a first-generation American. My parents were immigrants. So I actually went to a private school in the Capital District on scholarship. Our Catholic Church and the Catholic Diocese put all this money together to send me on scholarship because my parents were immigrants and I didn't speak English. And on top of it, they had gotten separated. So I had a single mom, very low income, on food stamps. And this wonderful gesture gave me this amazing opportunity for an education, but I didn't quite fit in. I noticed that my means were very different. A few times I had to go to school in a taxi while the kids around me were going to school in Volvos. And it took this wonderful teacher, Miss Clancy, may she rest in peace, that really gave me that dignity and let me know that I deserved to be there, that I was equal with all the other people in the classroom. And so that really resonated with me, this video. It's like you're trying to make me cry, Matt. What's going on?
Might beat you to that. Go ahead, Seema. And then Katie, and then to decide.
Did you see me, Matt? Sorry. I was just going to say two things resonated with me. First is so true about the relationship piece. More than anything, the content stuff and all that stuff can be worked on later. But if that relationship and that connection is not there, then I feel like there's nothing. So one piece of that, I think, on the student end, and then I think about it from the teacher end too, especially during COVID, and thinking about how often kids were out of school, and not just content, but just thinking about teachers not being able to make, because we have a lot of great teachers in our district, just not being able to make that connection or build that relationship with students when they were out of school, and how much of that was just lost. I feel like during COVID, because kids were just I know I can speak about myself personally, but I know it wasn't just me, of kids just constantly being out. And how do you get to build those when kids aren't there and you don't get to know them? So it was just like there were these these other consequences from COVID that we didn't always talk about, but they also were there as well. That it just made me think of that. Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, Katie, and then to decide. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, thought I unclicked it. Okay. So there was a lot there for me to think about being a special education teacher. But one thing that stood out to me is as a special ed teacher, we focus so much on building relationships with our students. And sometimes the students who need that the most from us are the ones that make us work the hardest to help develop those relationships with them. So whether they're guarded or their experiences that they've had, they make us be the most creative at finding the ways to connect and build their trust to make those relationships. So it was a good reminder of that.
Go ahead, to decide.
I guess when I heard it, I thought about the Pollyanna approach that we have and perspective that we have of teachers, and almost this thought process that they themselves are not human too. And I say that because when I look at teacher education programs, cultural competency is not something that is robustly taught in these programs. And then there are teachers who are thrust into these roles without that understanding of cultural competency. And that's where we see the friction. And that's where we see a lot of our D&I work being necessary, because now we have to help folks see the experiences of students that may not have or hold the same experiences that a teacher has or holds. And what struck me about the video, and what she's saying about having a right, is that I want to believe that teachers believe that, but I don't really know if the system is set up for them to understand how to operationalize that all the time. And when people ask, well, why are we doing this diversity and inclusion work, right? We're doing this diversity and inclusion work because diversity and inclusion wasn't really a thought process in a lot of these systems that were created when the educational system was created. And now we are trying to fill those gaps. And there are folks whose lived experiences allow them to have an empathetic muscle that is a lot bigger than others. And we are trying to help and not demonize folks for not having that empathetic muscle at the same level as other folks. We're trying to provide opportunities for folks to recognize that, and build that skill set. Because I say it all the time, and y'all have heard me say it. Empathy is the S class of humanity. It is not something that comes in the base model. It is something that is an upgrade. And it requires for folks to consistently be lifelong learners and develop that as a strength. So while I saw it as an aspirational call to action, I saw it also as why it is that we need this committee now more than ever in order to fill those gaps and to be able to not demonize folks who may have not been given, because of their lived experience or their programs or whatever it was, the cultural competency to deal with children that are different from themselves, not demonize them, but call them into the conversation, embrace, and help them to remember their why.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chris.
Whew. For me, the power in the statement is that it's utterly unqualified. I deserve this education, not I deserve this education if I wear the right shoes, or if I grew up in the right household, or if I don't need special accommodations in order to receive this education. It's that every student deserves the education. And I think that in my interactions with students, if they haven't been told that message enough, it just needs to be repeated to them over and over again by people who truly believe it. And kids can see through the BS, and they can see through it if people are faking it. And I know that kids are hearing messages that are other than that from all around them, from their peers. So sometimes it's not just the adults in the building who really should be sending that message of inclusion, but how do we teach kids to also be hearing what they're saying to each other? And that's an area that I really struggle with middle schoolers, because I can be welcoming, and we can make a school community of adults that are welcoming, but I need the kids to partner in that as well. And I have great buy-in from so many kids who want to create a more inclusive school, who want to see that all of their peers know that they deserve this education. And there are always, we live in a society where there'll always be outliers who maybe don't believe that. And I think we just need a school culture where we overwhelm the quiet voice of, no, you don't deserve this education because you didn't grow up like me, and you don't live the way I do, until you can't hear that voice anymore. And it's unqualified. Every kid deserves every scrap of education we can give them, so that we can grow a next generation that is so much better than, mine.
Thank you. And I believe, Nina, you were next.
So that was beautiful. So I want to say I completely agree. And it got me thinking about a couple things. I'm pretty sure I had mentioned this earlier on, but, teachers, we collectively generally have inherently a need to help. And you're right. At times, curriculum demands and programming can be distracting. So sometimes reminders are what teachers need. I did mention the possibility. I don't know if we would have the funds for something like bringing in a guest speaker, but I do think that, that would be something that would really help to bring about those types of awakened moments that would help teachers to remember some of our real teacher instincts. So that's one thing. The other thing is, based on what Chris, you were just alluding to, to me, it kind of brings in that character ed initiative piece too, by empowering students to do the right thing and champion against bullying and all of those different parts of those pillars that we strive for. I do agree. And I know there were questions about the audit bringing into some DEI / character ed. There has to be a significant overlap between the two different parts. There really not. There really is a strong component that they all share. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I do think that some kind of motivational presentation would be really helpful for all the different facets, whether that's the student body and the faculty as well. So thank you. I love that. I love that, what you said.
Thank you. Tam, go ahead.
So I've definitely seen that clip from Rita a ton of times as a teacher myself. And something that my school did last year, actually, I thought was really interesting. We had a list of all the students in the school, and we as staff had to go up and, like, if we had a relationship with these kids, we signed our name next to them, that if these kids ever needed someone, there was an adult that they could go to. And we saw that some kids didn't have a champion, so we made an effort to make sure that those kids at least had a relationship with at least one person in that building, so that every student in that building had someone that they could talk to and they could trust in school at all times, which was phenomenal. And something else that part of that same speech that Rita was giving, if you keep watching it, she also says that kids don't learn from people that they don't like. And that is so absolutely true. A funny story, I teach remedial math, and I had students from last year come up to me this year, like, if I do really bad in math, can I come back to you? So it's amazing to see, like, the relationships I've built with these students, that they want to come back. So it's amazing. Relationship is definitely the key.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. I had some other things I wanted to pick from the video, but they all emerged in the conversation already. And I think when I hear those words, I deserve the education I get here. To me, that's as much a statement as that is a call on all of us, on everyone who plays a role in each child's educational journey. That means that we also need to build a space that's deserving of them. And I think that is really where we come into play with this. And what stands out about us having a DEI committee, one, not every district does. Two, the size of it, that we have more applications than we can have members, that we have more members who join our subcommittees that are even on this screen. And there are people who've been in more than one subcommittee who really, really just want to get into this work. I think that it is impossible for us to hear that statement of I deserve the education I get here and to not act. That beckons me calling my own past as well, even just as an educator, that the way Rita ended in this segment, that we were born to do this. And I think there's something to be said for being born to things, but there's also, to Tiffany's point, choosing to do those. So, and building that capacity for empathy. And that's something that I do firmly believe that everyone has the capacity to build, is empathy. And so when we come from a place of empathy, then all of a sudden the work that we do here and the work that we do beyond, it's going to matter even more. And I think that when we keep that as our North Star, we're going to be in the right place. And so thank you everyone so much for engaging in the discussion surrounding that. Rita Pearson is someone who was inspirational to me when I first became a teacher. That speech came out right when I was starting. And seeing that honestly, it set up practices. One of the other things she mentioned was even just in the way she graded, she wouldn't put minus on things, and it would be, hey, if it was at a 20, someone got 5 things right, they'd get +5, not -15. And that became part of my mentality too, even with grading. And so I think that there's just a number of different things that we can carry into this in all of our different roles over the course of this year. But just to remember that why of, behind us being on this committee. And so that brings us to the next section of our agenda, which is about the steering committee. So the steering committee, I will do just a brief segment about that, unless someone else wants to. Actually, maybe it might even be more appropriate if someone else goes into what a steering committee does and the purpose behind it. But Dr. Rowe, if you want
me to do it, Matt?
Sure.
Excuse me. So the steering committee meets approximately a week before the actual DEI meeting, and essentially what we do is put the agenda together based on, excuse me, what the work was, last month. For example, Rebecca's question about reading. Let's say we look ahead at the book, see kind of what's appropriate or reasonable amount of reading for the learning component, and then maybe come up with some questions or think about how would we like to ask the group for questions, and essentially come up with the agenda for the next meeting that makes sense. And so some of those things could just be regular agenda items, but some of those things could also change based on what's happening in the school district, or maybe if questions have come up in the community. Matt, excuse me, came up with that Google form or sheet, I should say, that had the list of topics that people could put down for potential agenda items. And so we thought, we could go to those things as regular items, but if something was more emergent, we would add them to the list. And so there's a student on the steering committee too, which is helpful. And obviously Dr. Wiles, Matt, I don't remember if there was somebody else on there from the school district or not, but it's essentially coming up with the agenda, but also thinking about all of the different, people in the group and making sure that we've addressed questions that have come up in the previous month and that sort of thing. We also don't do public comment in the group. We do it in the regular board meetings. And so we talked about how to address questions that have come up either towards the group or within the group, and how to answer those questions in an effective way. So it's been a year. So some of this is still a little bit building the plane while we're flying it, but I think we've gone a lot better since where we were a year ago.
Thank you for that. I think maybe we can say that this is, we have a biplane right now and we're adding some turbines to it. Shortly before this meeting, everyone received an email from DepSim that had Google form for how we would vote for the steering committee. Before we do the vote, folks who were nominated are going to have an opportunity just to take a minute and to share their thoughts on being on the steering committee and why they would like to be on it. And just in the interest of time, we're going to keep that to a minute, but we'll go from there. So we'll start off with students, and we'll just kind of go alpha by last name. So Maxine, you'll be first.
Hi, I'm Maxine. I'm a senior this year at Goodland High School. This is going to be my 3rd year on the committee, and my passion for this work has only grown over the past 3 years. Something that my cross-country coach tells me is leave a place better than you found it, and that's really been my goal during high school. I want to make high school an even better experience for the people that come after me, and the work that has happened with DEI in the school, with the students, the student voice committee, the anti-hate rally that Savannah and I have worked so close on, has really made this school a more accepting place. And by being on the steering committee, I hope to further that work. And I am really excited about all the new things that are happening here this year and how this group can contribute to that.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we'll go next and we'll hear from Savannah.
Hi, it's my first year on the DEI committee, and even though I'm relatively new to this, I've been kind of working alongside Maxine, as she said, since sophomore year, and I've been a part of this sort of DEI initiative ever since we had our first anti-hate rally. And I feel like for me, being on the steering committee would mean that I would be not just like following like the paths of like what the sort of agenda would be. It would be me leading kind of the change, which is what I've always wanted to do with this work. I've always wanted to sort of not just like input my ideas, but would also want to see them be taken into action with my own leadership and under my guidance. And I think that being on the steering committee would be really good for me to help just, engage more and just be like able to see and learn about new perspectives and new understandings.
All right. Thank you. That was timed down to the second. I don't know if I heard my little minute timer going off. So the next student will be Kylie.
Hi, I'm Kylie. I'm a 7th grader in FMS this year, and I think I should really join the steering committee just to be more involved with DEI because it is my first year, and I believe to continue going through this till high school. And I just think having kind of a voice in how our agendas and like what's more important and like what should be talked about would really just be really good.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So now we'll move to the adults. We'll start with Blanca.
So thank you to whoever nominated me, first of all. And I would really like to be on the steering committee because I consider myself a change agent, right? An agent for change. And I see this as an opportunity to make a big difference in a district that I love. I'm an alum. I also think that, as you heard from my story earlier, I have a lot of different perspectives to offer. And not only with my own student experience, but I'm the parent of 3 very different children in the district who all have had very different experiences, some more positive than others. And also because I'm on the board and on the policy committee, I think I have a broad view of how DEI is essential across every single facet of this district. So I'm ready to jump in and take this on, this important work.
Okay, thank you. Next person, Tim, would you like to say a word or two?
Is it me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I don't know. I wanted to just give my position to Maxine, Savannah, and Kylie. To be honest, I just can't even understand how amazing these young people are. I am a person that has been involved in DEI work for a very, very long time now, and it's actually what I do for work. I'm constantly doing research and trying to be a lifelong learner in this space. I feel that being a part of the steering committee would be awesome, but only if I could give a seat to one of the students, I'll just say that. Like if I get picked and I could give it to one of the students, I'll give it to one of the students. But truly, this work has impacted me personally, impacted my children personally, and I just know that at the end of the day, the passion that I hold for this work, I want the school district to thrive and to be the best that it can be. And unlike some of the folks that are a part of the committee, doing the work as a consultant, doing the work in different spaces, higher education, corporate, now I'm in government and policy, gives me a broader perspective as to some of the different ways that we can implement these things while still meeting requirements that are mandated. So that's a little bit of my niche, but like I said, if y'all want to take Kylie, Savannah, Maxine over me, please do that.
All right, thank you. Chris?
Yeah, I'm Chris Jager. I am a school counselor at the middle school. I would like to see a lot of, well, I teach my kids how to advocate for themselves. I work really hard on getting kids to see that they can be change agents within our school. I'd like to be able to be a voice for some of the students who aren't confident enough to say the things that they want to say. I want them to feel represented. The other part, I am another Guilderland graduate. I came back to work in Guilderland because of my own experiences going through this district. I'm so proud that we have a middle school alliance now because I was a member of the very early on high school alliance. And I think one of the things that makes me proudest of being a Guilderland alumni is the work that we're willing to do and the sponsorship we're willing to have of our students and their efforts. So things like bringing in having a Muslim student association, we're growing such better adults than the ones that came before. And I want to help steer this committee to shape that more. I'd also like to see more communication directly to staff about what's happening here. I know they can watch this video, but I often have teachers be like, oh, what do you guys talk about on that? Because they're not going to necessarily take the time, although I do usually watch these things in double time so that it doesn't take as long. I would love to see more opportunities to relay this back to all shareholders, but definitely staff as people who are like, know that something's happening, don't always know what is happening.
Thank you. Next we have Nina.
Hi, so I'm Nina Kaplan, and I'm a parent of 3 children. 2 of them are in the district now, and I'm also a social studies teacher, as I said. So I have experience with the need for DEI on many different levels, and I really feel that it's important that I say what has been stated, which I feel like I'm in the presence of such noble people. So being here, I'm just honored to be here. So to be able to help to lead would also be even more amazing. I do organize a group in the district that I teach in, which helps to empower students because, and let me just say that one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this program into the district that I'm working in is because I saw so many kids that were not being validated the way that we were just talking about. And I don't want to use the phrase like slipping through the cracks, but that's kind of what I was seeing. And I would see these kids come in who were wonderful and then feel that they may not have a place. So to kind of give them a place, we have this program where they can become leaders in their school, even if they can't necessarily identify with a sport or a club that they already are in. So I guess to the bottom line is that I feel that in any way I could possibly add to guiding us towards making the best decisions that are for the community and for kids, because that's what we're all in the business for, I'd be honored to. So.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Floyd. I have a daughter in high school, but so that's a personal, reason that makes me want to. It makes this personal for me, but I, more than that, I really think that this is essential work for our community, for our district, for our country. We have done a lot in the past 3 or so years. Starting with looking for and then hiring our excellent DEI coordinator, and creating this committee, and trying to do this endless work of exploring how we can, where we are now in terms of helping each kid, regardless of their background, their religion, their income level, their ability, their sexual or gender identity. I probably left out a lot of things, but how we can help them to be, as we saw in that video, to be the best that they can be. So that's the goal of the DEI movement, is to figure out ways to make it possible to help each kid to thrive and grow. That's all it is. We're not trying to make anybody feel guilty or feel bad about themselves. On the contrary, we're trying to figure out how we can make each kid not just learn a lot, but become the best person they can become, including learning all that they can learn. But so I think it's been really interesting work, and I'm definitely passionate about it, and I have time for it, which is why I joined a second subcommittee last year, just to sort of like push it along as much as possible. And that's why I'm interested in being on the steering committee, so that I can try to help make sure that we make the most progress that we can make at this, especially during this next year when we're going to be doing this really important DEI audit, which will help show us where we are and how we can improve. So,
all right.
Got it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So now that everyone's heard from each other, I'm going to drop the link to the form in the chat. But again, it was sent out an email. We'll just give folks a little bit of time to take a look at that and to be able to fill it out. So the way that this is going to work, you'll select a student, and then there'll be 2 different adults to select, and we will go from there. Before we, or rather I should say, while folks are filling out that form, Seema brought this up earlier about the chart that was shared out for people to be able to leave thoughts going into future meetings. We are fairly close on time right now, so some of the items that were there will move on to the next one, but I'm going to share it with everyone right now. I just pulled the email list from the invite for this meeting, so everyone's going to be able to go in there as an editor. And the way that it works, there's a spot for suggested agenda items. If it's just a resource that you came across a really good article and you would like people to be able to read it, everyone will be able to go in and read that article. If there's a question, you can leave a question. The way it's organized, they're in a row, but you don't have to leave something in all 3 spots. You can just leave a question, just leave a resource, just leave a suggested agenda item, and you don't necessarily have to put your name right next to it either. So that's just something that we do have available. Maxine, go ahead.
I just had a quick question about the form. There are names on there that didn't speak. Is it just the people who spoke that we're voting for, or is it anyone on the list?
Yes, just everyone you heard from.
Okay.
Thank you. And so we're doing that. We'll give people a little more. I got to just count and make sure I'm not missing the number of votes we should have. So give folks just another minute or 2 to be able to tab that in, and then at the end we'll be able to look and see who our adults will be. And this is the math test for me. How fast can I add percentages? So I deserve this education. Was there anyone who, also I apologize to all of you. I honestly think I'm so funny. I'm really sorry that you have
I think you're hilarious.
Okay.
To be fair, I'm muted and I'm dying over here. So you can't hear me, but not for the record, but I'm dying over here.
Yeah, everyone you signed up for this term, so this is you're stuck with me. Was there anyone who was still voting? Okay.
Secretly, that's why I wanted to be on it, so that I get a double dose of all of your humor. I didn't mention that in my speech.
If anyone would like to send a condolence package to the district office for Dr. Wiles for having to, this is a regular basis. This is her everyday experience. So, Yeah, please keep her in your thoughts. And yes, Maxine, through the roof. All right.
Matt, I'm having figuring. I don't see the voting thing. Where is the voting thing?
I dropped the form in the chat, and also it came in an email from Deb Sim. I'll put it in the chat again right now, though.
All right. Can I just send you an email because I can't even find the form right now?
Okay.
So
Sure.
I'll just send you an email right now.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll take just another second. We'll wait for that email to come through, and then I'll add that to the account. And just based off time, that will be the last thing that we do for tonight. I will really try to not keep us past 8:30 in most instances. Okay. All right. So here are the folks that were selected to be on the committee, and just some. Elizabeth, do you have a thought beforehand? Your hand is still up, or? Okay, got it. Thank you. So our student representative on the steering committee will be Maxine. Then the first adult, because there's going to be two that are selected. First one is going to be Chris Shaker. And then our second adult, seemingly despite their best efforts, will be Tivasai. You played your cards wrong.
I did. It's okay.
But thank you so much to everyone who expressed interest in being part of the steering committee. Obviously, we're all going to be in this work collaboratively, and little do the folks who are on the steering committee know, really this just means an extra meeting time, and the MAT train doesn't stop there either. So it should be a good time. And so at some point tomorrow, everyone will also get a copy of the grid that has our subcommittee so that folks are aware and see who's on what. I think especially for the purposes of collaboration with one another as we get into this year. And thank you all for your time tonight. Is there anything I'm forgetting? No? All right, so then we'll be waiting on a motion to adjourn. Blanca, seconded by Chris. All right, thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your night.
Have a good night.